start the recording. Okay, thank you. So the game works like this. It's and you have this game in your manual. There's an in-person version and the online version. The online version can also be done in person, standing in a circle, and then you simply go around the circle. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask you all to unmute yourselves, because otherwise it's all this going back and forth to mute and unmute. I just find that some people are really skilled at it, not me. So it goes like this. I'm going to say, touch your nose. And then I'm going to say somebody else's name. So I might say, touch your nose, Colleen. Then we're all going to go, touch your nose, and do the movement. And Colleen is going to say, touch your
chin.
Okay, and then she's going to say somebody else's name.
Hetty.
So then we're all going to go, touch your nose, touch your chin, and listen for Hetty to say,
Touch your toes.
and the person's name.
Oh, sorry, Lene.
Okay, so you got it? You got the way the game works. And if it's just a little bit confusing, that's a little bit intentional because we want to see how Brain Gym works, okay? So I'll start again. Touch your shoulders, Andrea.
Touch your ears,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Laura.
Okay, so we all need to say touch your shoulders, and then Andrea's
Okay.
going to say, okay, that's my fault.
Are we adding each item to the list? So we're gonna have
We're
like
adding
5
each item to the list. So it's going to be, and if we were doing this in a circle, like I can't, I mean, you're probably all in different orders. So there's no way to do a physical order. But if you were doing this in space with kids, you could simply go around the circle and you just turn to the next person and they turn to the next person. Okay, so I'll start again. Touch your ears, Hetty. Touch your ears.
Touch your ears. Touch your toes, Lene.
Touch your ears. Touch your
toes. Touch your nose, Andrea.
Touch
your ears. Touch your
Touch
toes.
your toes. Touch
your
nose.
nose.
Touch your shoulders, Manon.
Touch your ears.
Touch your ears, touch your toes,
Touch your nose.
touch your nose,
Touch
your shoulders, touch the top of your head, Hetty.
Touch your ears.
Ears.
Touch your toes. Touch your nose. Touch your shoulder. Touch the top of your head.
Touch your cheeks, Dana.
Touch your ears. Touch your toes. Touch your nose. Touch your shoulders.
Touch your
Touch the top of the
shoulders,
head.
top of your head,
Touch your cheeks.
touch your cheek,
Touch your tummy, Laura. Touch your
Okay.
ears.
Touch your ears, touch your
touch your toes,
Touch your nose.
touch your nose,
Touch your shoulder.
touch your
Touch the
shoulders,
top of your
head.
head.
your
touch
top of
your
your head,
cheeks,
touch your
Touch your
cheek,
tummy.
tummy, and touch your
Touch
knees.
knees.
touch your knees.
Okay. So what did you notice? And you can just shout it out unless it gets too crazy.
Once you get adding on too many, it's hard to remember what the next one is.
Okay.
And then to also think of someone who hasn't already said something.
Okay.
I was too
what do
busy
you-
concentrating on the instructions. I was too
Okay.
busy listening to the instructions.
Okay. Good. So what, did anybody notice what your breathing was like? Was it relaxed
breath.
and deep, or was it a little more shallow?
I would say
Shallow.
mine was shallow.
Okay. Did you notice any tension in your body?
Maybe a little bit,
Okay.
because you're busy thinking.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm thinking, part of me was thinking just now, I wish I had you stand up, because that would have given you some more input. One of the things I want to encourage, that was good noticing, everybody. Thank you. Did anybody notice, just generally, then I would say one more thing, stress level, any stress level doing that?
For me, it was just a little stressful trying to
Trying to
remember.
remember, yeah.
Okay.
same.
Okay. So, so one thing I wanted to point out, one of the challenges of Zoom land is that we're dealing with this two-dimensional screen. So here's your first little bit of a theory. We are three-dimensional beings. We live in a three-dimensional world. And actually, the amount of time that children spend with flat screens is detrimental to their development. I'm just going to say that straight out. There are studies that show it's the case. I've had too much experience, working with young kids in schools over the past 10 years to have seen the change. And part of Zoom fatigue, I believe, because I actually do a lot on Zoom, and I very rarely get Zoom fatigue or eye strain, but I use my Brain Gym. I also am doing mostly things that have some movement. No, at least half of them have movement components, but also it's my natural tendency as a dancer and a Brain Gym practitioner to do things that remind me that I'm three-dimensional. Does that make sense to anybody? And
Yeah,
maybe those of
very
you who are musicians are used to that anyway, because music is obviously a very physical three-dimensional thing. But so I just wanted to point that out. It is a scientific fact that we learn first through our bodies. We learn through our senses and the movement of our bodies. Somebody told me yesterday, a dancer, how she was working with a math teacher, and she had a lot of Asian students who were very good at repeating everything, all the equations and stuff. But if she gave them a different equation in a test, they didn't know what to do. And so the dancer added some movement and stuff into class and thought of ways of working some of these math concepts with movements. And the kids said, "Oh, I get it," basically was the response. So there we go. So we are now going to do 4 Brain Gym activities that will help us get in our bodies. And then we're going to do that activity again and notice the change. This is a basic Brain Gym concept. We do pre-activities and post-activities. And that is, in my experience, where I've gone into schools, some schools have had some Brain Gym, but I can tell how it was taught by whether the kids are using it or not. And what I think happens oftentimes is teachers are given a little workshop and they're given a couple of Brain Gym exercises and do it this way. And it's like what I call a recipe card. And the kids have no idea what the Brain Gym is doing for them. So this, I'm modeling exactly how I hope that you will use Brain Gym, which is always having something that they can notice how it is, do the Brain Gym, and then notice how it is after you do the Brain Gym, because that's really learning. Learning is noticing change, right? So we're going to do what we call PACE. You see I hope, does that look like, can that spell PACE, or is it backwards on your screen?
No,
Okay.
it spells space.
So PACE stands for 4 concepts. PACE is about being ready to learn. PACE is about being present. And specifically, Dr. Dennison has defined 4 words that those stand for. So starting with P, what do you suppose P stands for?
I assumed you just said it.
Can we
Does it
cheat?
stand for present?
Well, that would be lovely. And I would, if I were to do it, I would say presence. But it's the kind of attitude that you need in order to learn anything. And if you've looked at your manual, of course, it's there.
Patience.
Positive,
Positive.
positive. Okay. Next is A. A stands for
Action.
active.
Action.
Action, active. We learn through moving in Brain Gym. Dr. Dennison famously said, movement is the door to learning. And why is that? Our vestibular system is the first sensory system to develop in the body. Well, I don't know, there may be some tactile before that, but I believe it's 4 to 5 weeks. The three little bones in the ear, or the semicircular canals, I should look up my notes, are fully formed. So our hearing and sense of balance is the first thing to start developing in the embryo. That's when we're still, I mean, you know, we're just have been a lump of cells that start then specializing, and those 3, that vestibular system is the first to develop, or one of the very first. Okay, so active. C stands for
Clear.
yes, clear. Okay, just think about your own learning. If a teacher was not able to articulate something in a way that you could understand. So once again, learning has to be, in Brain Gym, we start wherever people are at. There's no predefined level that somebody needs to be at in order to learn. You have to start wherever they are and validate that and move forward. Okay? And then E stands for
Energetic.
energetic, and the brain. So we're going to start at the back of the word. I always say it's like you start at the bottom of the ladder when you want to climb up. So we're going to start at the back of the word. We need energy. Dr. Dennison actually started with the activity for PACE, and then he discovered people couldn't do that. So he went to something to get them to be active, and then that still wasn't working. So he decided they needed clarity about what they were doing. And then in order to do that, they had to have enough energy, brain energy. And brain energy comes from oxygen and water. So breathing and water is something you're going to hear about a lot. So cheers. I invite you all to take a sip of water, but don't swallow it right away. Swish it around in your mouth, really, sip it. We say sipping water because some water is absorbed directly in the mouth. Water molecules are one of the 2 molecules, the other being alcohol, that is absorbed directly by the cells, which is why alcohol goes to your head, because it goes directly to the brain. So does water. And we need water for all the chemical reactions that are the way that the brain actually biologically processes information. Okay? So we swish it around our mouth, we swallow it. There's another point to that, and that is Brain Gym works because it is conscious I'm trying to think of the other word. It's not just because we're moving. Little tiny babies move, but they have no clear intention, right? When they start moving, it's just programmed in them. But Brain Gym works because it's conscious, intentional movement. So it's also great to tell by actually focusing on the fact that you're sipping water, tasting it and swallowing it, you're also telling your system, I'm going to nourish you now. I'm going to give you something that you need, that's good for you, or that's pleasurable to drink, whatever. You're preparing your body to receive that and use it. Okay, consciousness. Next, we're going to stimulate 2 acupressure points on either side of your sternum. Now, I didn't bring the skeleton out here, but maybe you can kind of see. Find your collarbones across here. And at the ends of your collarbones, you'll feel these little lumps, right? That's the end of the collarbone. That's where it attaches to the sternum. Now, right below those little lumps are the final point on the kidney meridian, which the Chinese consider to be the kidney energy is the battery, like the kidneys store the energy for the body in their system. And then we're going to place our other hand over our navel, because we are creating an electrical circuit. So we've gone on to clear. So we've dealt with the chemistry, with the E for energy, the water. Now we're going to deal with the electricity in the body. So we're just going to give these points a gentle rub, but 2 hands completes the circuit, right? Just like turning on the switch, it actually puts those electrodes together. So as we do that, we're going to track our eyes from side to side. Just like you were scanning that prairie horizon. So vast. And breathing deeply. And when that feels complete, sometimes I just get a nice big deep breath. It just comes naturally. You're going to switch hands. So another thing we're doing here is we're finding our midline, right? We have these 2 spots. Our sternum is our midline. Our navel is our midline. So it's also helping people to center themselves into the midline of their body. So that would be really important, I would think, for playing the piano or playing the cello, knowing your midline of your body and when you're crossing it and opening out from it. And the reason we track our eyes is because it tells our nervous system that we're safe. So this is scanning the horizon is a very ancient, this is in our DNA from evolution, from a million years ago. You scan the horizon to tell, I'm not saying you all should be scanning the horizon for danger, but I'm saying just that eye movement. Just notice as you do that, sometimes, my shoulders will relax, because it does tell your nervous system that things are okay. There's no tigers out there. There's no bear in your kitchen. Okay, so now we move up the ladder to A for active. Now we're going to do those cross crawls. So we've been sitting for a long time. So let's all stand up. And of course you can do all of these standing. So, as I explain to children, I tell them, do you know which side of your brain is controlling your right hand? And we learn that it's the opposite one. And so I say, do you think it's easier to learn if one side of your brain is working at a time, or if both sides of your brain are working at a time? Do you think they should work together? Oh, yeah. Okay, so if I move my right hand, which side of my brain is working? This side. So if I want to get the other side of my brain working, which leg needs to work? This one. Okay, so we're just going to put them together. We're going to move opposite, upper and lower at the same time. So that's a very simple basic cross crawl. Now, you can also do elbow to knee, and notice the difference in your body when you reach and touch your knee with your elbow, if that's comfortable to do. Do you feel other muscles working?
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we're involving our latissimus dorsi. That is a muscle in the Chinese energy system that is connected to being able to relax versus worry. They say the spleen energy is the energy of worry. So we're stretching out that muscle that's connected to the polarity of worry versus relaxation. And we're also, by lifting our thighs, we are using our psoas muscle, which is a muscle connected again to that kidney energy. And that in the Chinese energy system is related to fear. So when we're doing cross crawls, not only are we stimulating both sides of our brain to work together, which we have to read or write or lots of other things, we are also helping to relax the body and release fear. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to sit down. We're going to cross our ankles. I'll wait to make sure everybody can see this. So I'll do the normal way first, and then I'll show you how I do this with kids. So thumbs up, thumbs down, cross your wrists, lace your fingers together, rest your hands on your sternum. And then we're going to breathe in through and out through our nose. As we breathe in, we're going to touch the tip of our tongue to the roof of our mouth. And breathe out through your mouth. Let your tongue go. And then when you breathe in, just touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth again. And this position is meant to be a relaxed position. You don't have to sit up and hold yourself, however it's comfortable. And just notice if you sense any change in your body. Okay, we'll do that for any of you who want. Here's another way of doing that. Two little friends are walking down the street. They pass each other by. They turn around with their thumbs pointing to the ground. They give each other a hug, and they hold each other tight. And if, like this is getting harder for me, I have some arthritis in my hands, you can just let your hands go if you want. So we'll just hold it for just another minute or so. When you feel ready, just put your feet flat on the floor. The second part of hookups is to simply bring your fingertips together and you just rest your arms on your lap if you like, or you hold it, whatever. And just take just a couple more breaths like that. So, what did you know? Did you notice any change when you did the hookups? Any change in your body?
Yeah, it
Feel
brings the
relaxed.
lower. Yeah, it brings the energy lower.
Okay,
Right.
more relaxed. Interesting your use of the word lower. I know what you mean. I'm thinking of reactions of kids. Did you notice any change in the thoughts in your head from when you started it to the end?
I did. I noticed that I became more present, like more in the here and now, whereas before I was not really concentrating on me. I was concentrating on the class, and
Mm-hmm.
you suddenly relax and kind of, I don't know, you become more present.
Super. Anybody notice any difference in feelings, like as any kind of emotions that you had when you started sitting down, and did that change? Any
Maybe lower anxiety,
lower anxiety? Okay. Focus,
more calm, more relaxed.
calm. Okay. And in your body, did you notice any change in any tension anywhere in your body?
The
I
shoulders.
felt like I felt less tension and more peaceful.
Okay. And somebody said shoulders. Yeah. How many of us discover, that we're walking around holding our shoulders up, like that's somehow going to support ourselves, In my brain body fitness classes, I bring a skeleton out and we look at the fact that actually it's pretty pointless to try to hold yourself up from your shoulders. It's not going to support you. Okay. So let us do the game again. And I'm going to invite you, if you want, to do it standing up. Just kind of for those of you who are teaching online, just remembering, this is part of doing movement breaks, is just getting people out of chairs. And it is amazing to me how much, despite the fact that people complain about sitting in front of a monitor, how much it takes to get them off their chairs. So here we go. I can move back a little bit myself because I've got the space, but so here we go. Linnea, would you like to start?
Sure. Touch your elbows. Colleen.
Touch your elbows.
Those.
Touch your knees. Andrea.
Touch
your elbows.
elbows.
Touch your knees.
knees.
Touch your nose. Hetty.
Touch your
elbows.
elbows.
Touch your
Touch
knees.
your knees. Touch your nose.
Touch your shoulders.
Touch.
Dana,
Touch your
Touch your elbows.
Rose,
Touch your
knee.
knees.
Touch
Touch your
Touch
nose.
your
Touch
nose.
your shoulders.
Touch your shoulders.
Touch your toes.
touch your toe.
Touch your toe.
Laura. Touch
Touch your stomach.
Okay. Let's all do it.
Oh, sorry.
Touch your elbows. Touch
your
your
knees.
knees. Touch your nose.
Touch your nose.
Touch your
Touch your
shoulders.
shoulders.
Touch your
Touch your
toes.
toes. Touch your tummy.
Touch your tummy.
Touch your.
Who's next?
Oh, boy. Mano, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Touch
I'll do
your
elbow,
elbows.
touch
Touch your knees.
touch
Touch your nose. Touch your shoulders. Touch your toes.
belly.
Touch your tummy.
tummy,
Touch your ears. Colleen.
touch your elbows, touch your knee,
Knees.
touch your
Touch your
nose,
nose.
touch your shoulders,
Touch your toes.
touch your
Touch your tummy.
tummy,
Touch
touch
your ears.
ears,
Touch your eyes.
Touch your eyes.
touch your elbows, touch your knees, touch your
Touch your
nose,
nose.
touch your
Touch your
shoulders,
shoulders.
touch
Touch your toes.
touch your tummy,
Your tummy. Touch your
ears,
ear.
touch your
Your
eye.
eyes.
Okay. So what did you notice doing at that time? Anything different? Is anything different or the same?
It was easier.
Much easier. And I noticed that a lot of us did kind of a cross pattern. Like if we said touch our shoulders, we actually sometimes cross them or we cross our knees, because we've
Mhm.
just done the motions.
Anything else? So easier,
More flow.
more flow. Right. Thank you, Colleen. It's a little bit, it's easier to feel that when you're in a group together because what normally happens there is a rhythm develops. And we all know the struggle with timing on Zoom. I'm sure you music teachers, it must be quite a challenge. If you are doing classes online, what I've learned is if you want to do something, a group thing, to orient people towards coordinating visually, because the sound is always going to be different, but visually, it's possible to align movement visually. I did one, a kind of a dance online with 3 people, and we found that we could coordinate the dance visually. And in this case, it was using a poem. So we just had one person speaking the poem and we coordinated everything visually. So if you want to do something with it to develop kind of a rhythm online, that's just my observation. Okay, so ease, I heard that was the first word that came out, and that is a lot of what Brain Gym is about. Why shouldn't we be able to learn with ease? Because when we learn with ease and joy, we're going to re-access ease and joy whenever we do whatever it is we're learning, when we re-access that tool. If we learn in a stressful situation, if we learn with stress, the stress is part of our learning. So that's one of the things where Brain Gym is so useful. If you do the Brain Gym ahead of the learning, you can do it with the learning as well. But if you get the system ready to learn, that presence that Laura was talking about, that she experienced, that was calm and feeling in her body, then we're able to anchor that learning to a relaxed, comfortable state in our body, rather than to a tense, try hard state. So we're gonna kind of dissect that a little bit more as we go on. But I want to do a little bit of talk about developmental movement, because that's what we're really working with Brain Gym. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, and what? Okay. So this is in your book. This is the Pyramid of Learning according to, it's actually on page 8, according to Williams and Schellenberger. And that's, you notice what's at the top? Academic learning. And how many levels up the pyramid is that? So, and what do we start with on the bottom? Those 3 senses that develop in utero: tactile, vestibular, and proprioception. Those are the most important senses for our survival. They develop before vision. We have become such a visual society, or visually oriented society. But tactile, vestibular, and proprioception, and of course, there's also auditory starts developing in the womb as well. Okay. Then we have to get all of our body awareness, all of our motor coordination developed. We have to mature our reflexes, develop our hand-eye coordination, and our spatial perception, our language skills. And then we get to behavior. So my question to teachers who are always, or people who are also concerned about, you know, self-regulation, we need strategies for self-regulation. If the person can't control their movement with ease, how are they going to control their behavior? What foundation do they have? What basis do they have for controlling their behavior? So behavior is up here, you know, seven rows up, I think it is, you know, and daily activity. So at this point, we're getting ready to go to school. But there's so much work that needs to be done here. And I see so many kids in school who have all sorts of gaps. And to me, it's just like a pyramid. If you take out one of these gaps, we'll talk specifically about reflex integration. If you take out those reflexes in the middle of this pyramid, what's going to happen? Well, what happens is the child will build compensations. They'll use extra effort to get around that gap. And then someday there's going to be so much weight on top of those compensations, they'll break down. So to me, I like to be able to see people, so I'm going to stop the share. It's in your book. You got the principle, right? So to me, it just makes so much sense. We have several music teachers here. How many of you have known people who get to a certain level in their music training, in their music performance, and then they just can't seem to get beyond there? Or they even get to a certain point of their career and all of a sudden there's this crisis and it all collapses, or they just can't go on, or they abandon it, because that eventually that missing piece just becomes too costly to their system to continue to compensate for.
Mostly, I think what you find there is things like repetitive strain and other, you know, back issues and things where people have been maltreating their body for so long that they can't manage anymore.
Yeah, that's part of it, and one thing. And it always is amazing to me, how come there's all this repetitive strain and people are having, you know, in our society now. And we all know, for instance, I'm just sticking on the musicians. We all know musicians who have played into their 80s. even, you know, continue to, you know, so it's not, it's doing something, a specialized task does not have to be detrimental to your body if everything's in balance. Okay, so here's my way of looking at it. What does Brain Gym do? So we want to learn how to do something, or we have a goal, right? So we're going to figure out how to do that. From the time we're babies, we want that toy, and we're going to figure out how to get that toy, right? But that means we're going to lay out a circuit in our brain, our intranet, I call it, our intranet, not the internet out here, but we have that incredible intranet inside our brain. So I know I want that book that's on that little table you can see in the corner there. And I've learned that to get over there, by you know, trial and error, I found out that eventually I got there. Okay, so I learned that pattern. Maybe it's how I learned how to do a math problem, or how I learned how to, I don't know, tie my shoes. What we do with Brain Gym is we set a goal, we have an intention. That clarity again, right? Clarity. What I really want is to just get to my book. Okay. We then find, what resources do I need to get to my book? Well, I need to focus my eyes on the book and know where I'm going, and I need to move in the forward dimension. My muscles need to be organized that way. So maybe I could just go in a straight line. Yeah, I'm making it, okay? I've got that new pattern in my brain, that new surface in my brain, but it's pretty slow, right? It's tentative still. It's the first time you played that scale, okay? So what needs to happen for us to do that quickly and easily and with flow and whatnot is that pathway in the brain needs to be myelinated. And to me, that's like it's turning the path through the woods from a track in the woods to a gravel county road to a asphalted road to a 4-lane highway where you can go 110 kilometers an hour on cruise control. Okay, so it becomes automatic. So now when I want my book, I need to practice that many times to myelinate it. However, Brain Gym movements stimulate that myelination. So physiologically, that's what they're doing. It's giving us a kickstart by the kind of coordination and focus that the Brain Gym movements help us to achieve, so that I can really start myelinating that right away very quickly. Does that make sense? That's why movement is so important, because movement is the one thing that stimulates the growth of new nerve cells in the brain and new pathways, neural pathways in the brain. Okay, so that's my other answer of what is Brain Gym. Okay, so what I wanted to point out is that we're born with billions of neurons. It's amazing, right? But they're not connected. And we don't have the picture in this particular manual, but I've seen it online, of a newborn baby's brain. And it shows all these little dots that are all these neurons. And then there are just a few little chicken scratches of connections. And then you see the scan of somebody who's maybe 8 years old or something, and all of a sudden it's getting very, very black with all the little connections. So what connects those connections? Everybody? Movement. Okay, so movement starts that. So it's like we're born with all the parts in the car, but nothing's been wired together yet. So we need to do the wiring. Now, what encourages that wiring? We are born with our own teacher, or our own teachers, sorry. And those teachers are called reflexes. They are genetic. They are our program for how to use our body. So by reflexes, you all know what I mean. I'm not talking about, bonging your knee and checking to see if your leg will straighten like a doctor might do. So one example is the palmar reflex. You put your finger in the palm of a baby, and at a certain point in their development, they will automatically close. And when I was a kid, I loved babies and kids, and I thought, oh, they're holding my hand. I was so excited. They took a hold of my hand. I thought that was special. Well, no, it wasn't special at all. The baby would do that, whoever put their finger in their hand, because reflexes are automatic responses to stimuli. The stimuli can either be it's a sensation or a movement. Okay. And what happens is that's teaching the baby how to use its fingers to grasp. They have to learn, they have to strengthen those muscles, and they also have to develop the coordination. So we have all those reflexes. The thing is, each of those reflexes comes online in a preordained sequence, but the amount of time that it takes to integrate each reflex is different for everybody. So the kid will continue to do that until eventually his hands get so coordinated and so strong, he's bored with doing that, and the central stimulation does not elicit the response anymore, if it's integrated. Okay, that's the catch. If it's not integrated, what happens? I would like to invite you to all lift up your water bottle, hold it out straight armed in front of you while I talk. Okay? So, as I said, reflexes are automatic movements. We have no control over them. And if they're unintegrated, we will also have no control over them. So for instance, some of you may have known kids who, oh, this chair doesn't have legs, who wrap their legs around the chair in school. Yeah. Or who sit on the floor in a W sit like this. That's because of a reflex called the symmetrical tonic neck reflex, which means that whenever you look down, the legs straighten. And whenever you look up, the arms straighten. So a baby would be doing this like this. They look up and their arms stretch so they can see. And they look down and their legs stretch, and it's preparation for being able to get up to stand. And they'll do this. I saw a little boy, toddler, doing this in the airport. His parents were online waiting for the tickets, and they were totally ignoring him, but he was just going up and down and up and down and up and down, because that's what kids will do when the reflex is active. Okay, now you can put your glasses down. So how easy was it for you to hear me and understand what I was saying, process what I was saying while you were holding your water bottle up? Did anybody find it more difficult?
At the end, it's harder.
Yeah.
At the end, it's harder. Okay. I noticed Colleen gave up early on. Okay.
It got heavy.
Yes, exactly. But that's exactly what is happening to kids who we may say they have learning problems, but if they have those reflexes still active, it's out of their control. So they're wrapping their legs around the chair so their legs don't go do this every time the teacher says, read your book, and they kick the chair in front of them, or the teacher just doesn't like kids moving around, whatever. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that takes a lot of energy, and especially if you're trying to suppress a reflex. So if you're trying to hold, or kids will sit, with their, sit on their legs to keep that from happening. There are other reflexes. All kinds of strange things. Kids, using their tongue to help them write. There are all sorts of examples of this. So that obviously can interfere with learning because you're taking away the energy that the brain needs. 80% of the energy in our brain is used for our posture, balance, and muscle control.
So if you have, for example, speaking of tongue, that just reminds me of a student I have. If you have a student who's using his tongue when he's playing, he's concentrating so hard. Is that a bad thing or a good thing then?
That means that he's using extra energy that is a compensation. Okay, so it's maybe a little bit different shade here. What we're talking about there, we call that recruiting. So he's recruiting parts of his body that have nothing to do with what he's trying to achieve or the task at hand, right?
Right.
So that's basically wasted energy. And these are quite common. Another common one is, people who can't keep the car going straight ahead if they turn to shoulder check or ride a bicycle. Can you ride a bicycle and turn your head to look at what's going on and still go straight ahead? If not, it's the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, which the babies do lying on their back. They look in one direction and then they reach with that side of the body and the other side automatically flexes, and it prepares them to start to be able to roll over. Okay. So one of the things we're doing with Brain Gym is helping the system to refine its movement coordination, so we don't have it's a funny thing. We're aiding learning by removing an obstacle. Does that make sense? Yeah, that way. So, I mean,
But how do you know, for example, with this little guy with his tongue, or if somebody's cutting with scissors, you often see that too. There, how should you discourage that, or how do you figure out what's missing?
We'll talk about that more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because once we've done the Brain Gym exercises, I'll put it into context.
It'll come together.
So if I don't, it'll come together. So just make sure and ask me the question again if I haven't brought it up. Okay. So this
I won't be
all
there, but I hope somebody else will.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I'll make a note. Okay, I'll just put down tongue. Okay. So here a little note. Laura, you said your grandson may be diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, those labels, and I hope that he, as much as possible, forget I hope that it's possible for him to not be told that he is ADHD.
Okay.
Okay. So by the end of tomorrow, hopefully it'll become more clear, and that this isn't a whole course in sort of that specific aspect, but Dr. Carla Hannaford, the biologist who wrote Smart Moves, The Physiology of Brain Gym, said in her experience working with people with learning disabilities that it didn't matter ADD, ADHD, ADS, are all in her mind SOSOS, stressed out, survival oriented humans. And
That sounds exactly right.
yeah, so
Exactly.
in the case of ADD and ADHD, there are two specific reflexes that are often active, and those are very primitive reflex, the fear paralysis reflex and the Moro reflex or the startle reflex. They're reflexes that develop in utero, and sometimes for various reasons they remain active, and then they either shut they do two things. They're like what can I say? Fear paralysis shuts the system down. Moro or the startle reflexes alerts the system. And so if that is going on, that is taking an enormous amount of energy, and it makes it almost impossible to focus.
It sounds exactly like what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. So Brain Gym will be a gentle way of starting to integrate these, and we can talk maybe at the end tomorrow about some other things that would also help in those particular cases. But Brain Gym
Okay,
is
thank you.
definitely useful. And actually what you learned today, the 4 things you've already learned today, you could start with those right away, because that's a real powerful quartet. Probably
Okay, thank you.
Probably the most important thing in this class if you don't remember everything else that's in these 88 pages, or use it, but if you use PACE every day with your students and in your life, that'll be a big tool. Like that's what I do every day. Use every morning.
Just so far, just this far in the course, I can say that I already want my daughter to take this course, who is his mother. I think this can really help him.
Great. So just one other little bit of theory about the reflexes is that as those reflexes mature, they become part of larger patterns, which are called developmental movement patterns. Sometimes they're called fundamental movement patterns. They're usually categorized as about 7 of them. And they also follow this order. So this whole idea, our school system was set up in the industrial age, or a lot of it, basically, to create uniform products, right? But we are not uniform. Everybody learns at their own rate. And this whole idea of milestones that kids have got to, by so and so many months, they should be doing this and so on. That's not what's important. What's important is they go through all the steps. If you rush the steps, this is part of the reason why I wasn't ready to answer your question, Hetty, about the tongue thing. Because in Brain Gym, we always meet everybody where they are at. And that is the right place for them to be now. And then we move forward from there. So for instance, the cross-lateral movement pattern that was, so cross crawls that we did, that is the movement pattern we're going to work with tomorrow. It is the 6th or 7th. It's the final movement pattern. It's the movement pattern that provides the coordination for walking on 2 feet. And there are no more movement patterns after that. It combines all 3 spatial dimensions. I could go on and on about it. I love this side of it, but that's not what we're learning today. I teach another course about movement patterns. But I just wanted you to understand that this is the underlying foundation of the Brain Gym movements, is they help to integrate these movement patterns. In Brain Gym, we don't deal with trying to diagnose or integrate a specific reflex that might be missing. We go to work on the level of the movement pattern. And if the movement pattern then can be integrated, those reflexes kind of magically usually will come along, unless somebody really has enormous deficits that needs special one-on-one work. So I hope that was sort of clear. Those movement patterns also occur in an order. And the fascinating thing about, to me, is the order is evolutionary. So the first movement pattern is breathing and cellular breathing, which is something that all living life does. The second movement pattern is navel radiation, which is the relationship of our distal ends to our navel. This obviously is a pattern from in utero, where all of our nourishment happens through our navel, and our relationship is all towards our navel. And you see that in starfish and octopuses and jellyfish and other animals. And then you move on to, I won't go into mouthing, but the next big movement pattern is spinal movement. So you have reptiles have spinal move, snakes, fish have spinal movement, and babies go through their fish state where they're just wiggling around a lot, getting that spine active. And then we have the 3 locomotor patterns, the upper lower pattern where we move both hands together at the same time, or both feet. That allows us to start working on being able to stand. We have the one-sided pattern, side to side, or homolateral pattern. And that's like the way a lizard crawls or a baby crawls on their tummy. And that gets them to separate one side of their body from their other. And then you have the cross-lateral pattern where we start coordinating the whole body to move together. We learn to do that by crawling. And that gives us the coordination we need to be able to walk on 2 feet. Okay, so that's the developmental stuff we're working with. We've done pace. So we talked a little bit about stress. There's a whole page on stress in your manual. I'll just note quickly that stress is not the enemy. What we're talking about usually when we say stress is distress or inadequate coping mechanisms. We have it, yeah. Inadequate coping mechanisms. That's what stress is. We need stressors in life. We need stressors to learn. I mean, gravity is a stress on our body. But that's just a fact of life, right? If we thought, oh, I'm so stressed by gravity. Oh my God, I have to keep pushing my body up, you know. Okay, stress is a fact of life. But what we need are really efficient, effective tools, techniques, methods for dealing with stress. And that's a lot of what Brain Gym is about, eliminating inefficient methods of dealing with stress. Okay, now one of the things about that's probably important to understand in terms of the Brain Gym we're going to do is that what happens under stress is that the body has a whole system for dealing with stress, and it's the same no matter what the stress is. If you're particularly sensitive, it could be a loud noise. It could be, you know, a tiger jumping out of a tree in front of you, being chased by a bear, something like that. It could be the constantly changing noise and lights and images on the television set. Our systems will interpret that as being there is something crazy going on. I'd better be really alert and aware. And actually, they do that in purpose in television shows. I don't know if you've ever noticed how the volumes change and how many times the images change in a commercial in 30 seconds. What they are doing with that is trying to stimulate, and I would say, I mean, it's causing overstimulation to keep you awake. Because otherwise, why wouldn't you just fall asleep in front of in your nice comfy chair in front of the television set? What does that box mean? That's not another human being. That's not your pet. That's not, that's a box that's making noise and light. And they learned early on in television that people were not very excited about it and people were not paying much attention. So they're actually called jolts, or technical events is the term, but jolts. So they actually put in stressors into television programming to make sure that you keep getting excited and you become addicted to it, because you get in it whenever so what I was saying, what are the stress mechanisms in the body? One is adrenaline rush. You get a little extra shot of adrenaline to make sure that you've got all the energy you need, even if you might be hungry or even if you might be tired. You get that extra, it's like a drug pushed into your body to say that, you've got the energy you need to deal with this stressful situation. Well, one of the things that does is it starts to deplete our adrenal glands and the amount of adrenaline we have available for when we really need it. And then you get people who feel fatigued a lot. I remember teaching a grade 1 class, a dance class. And, I was probably 50 years old at the time. And this one little boy in class said, "You're killing me, man. You're killing me." And I thought, oh my gosh, you should be wearing me out. And I'm wearing you out. Something's wrong here. And then I asked asked another class, of grade twos who came in and they were all tired. I said, when did you all get to sleep last night? And I couldn't believe it, like midnight, 10
Mhm.
o'clock. So as an artist in residence, I can sort of, be tacky and say whatever I want because I'm gonna be gone in a week and nobody's gonna come down on me. I said, you need to get to bed at 8 o'clock. That's not enough sleep for you. Anyway, so stress. So there are a lot of physiological things, and this is commonly called fight-flight response. So it's hormones. The blood goes out of the stomach. It goes to the big, strong muscles. It goes out of the prefrontal cortex where we have our executive function and our ability to think and process new information, and it goes into the brain stem, which we will look at, because we don't have time to think. So the brain stem is our unconscious part of our brain, and it does a great job of keeping our heart beating, keeping us breathing, taking care of our balance and all that sort of stuff, digestion, and it simply takes over. The result is it shuts the door to this part of your brain. You says, you don't have time to think. I'm taking over. I'm in control. But that means that we're not in control of our actions. And this is the problem of what happens as kids get stressed and we think they're acting out. Well, they aren't choosing to act. They need to learn how to control their behavior, of course, but they need real tools that are going to help them do that. But just telling them that they need to control themselves, they are controlling themselves. It's just that the part of their brain that we want to control themselves, that we can talk to and reason with, is not available to them. So that's an important thing to understand. Now, there are ways of dealing with that, but it's not just like talking strategies, which I've seen being offered. They need to deal with the physical situation. So time to do a little more movement. Okay, we're going to play the spaghetti game. This is great fun to play with kids. You can do this standing, sitting, or lying as you wish. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do it like I do with kids, because most of you work with some age of children. So I want you to imagine that you are spaghetti. Your body is spaghetti, and this is spaghetti right out of the box, hasn't been cooked. So make yourself like spaghetti and just notice what that feels like. Really turn yourself into spaghetti. Anybody have any words for what this spaghetti is feeling like in your muscles? Just shout it out if you do.
It's stiff.
Stiff. Okay. Are you breathing?
Yes.
Not much. Okay. Do you feel ready to move? I mean, maybe no. Okay. I mean, maybe you sometimes could say, well, yeah, we want to move. Okay. But no, you're not in a way. So do you feel ready to learn?
No.
Okay. What happens when you bend uncooked spaghetti? It breaks. It cracks. It breaks. So do you think this kind of body state is a great one for learning, for your body, for living? Okay.
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, let's let that go. But you all have known that you experience sometimes a bit of uncooked spaghetti somewhere in your body from time to time, doing certain things, right? Raise your hand if you've somehow experienced some uncooked spaghetti. Okay. So this is great because as I mentioned before, noticing is, maybe I didn't mention it clearly enough. What we're learning now is the noticing principle of brain gym. And Dr. Dennison said this was actually one of the most important, I think he maybe said it's the most important part of brain gym, is the noticing. Because developing noticing, it's like developing a muscle. You have to develop the ability to notice, to observe. That makes the difference in somebody who is able to take responsibility for their own learning. Okay, that happens through noticing. So, or observation. Okay, so now I want you to imagine that mom has put a huge pot of water, boiling water on the stove. She's put in the spaghetti, and her best friend calls her on the phone. And she goes to answer the phone. In my day, you have to go and answer the phone. Okay, so talking on the phone. Ask kids, how long do you think that lasts? An hour. Okay, so she comes back an hour later to the pot of spaghetti. And what's the spaghetti like?
Mushy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
stuck together.
Okay, stuck together, sticky, mushy. Okay, so turn your bodies into uncooked spaghetti. You can sit in your chair, you can collapse on the floor like the kids do, whatever. When you get your body, just let it all go like mush. Mush, mush, mush. So what is your breathing like now? Is it deep and full? And do you feel ready to, move, to get up, and are you ready to maybe try a 5-kilometer marathon or dance class, or you feel ready for that? Play your cello?
More so than uncooked spaghetti.
More so than uncooked spaghetti. Okay.
It's slower, but still not good.
Yeah. Okay. So that doesn't seem the best way to be as well. And there's certainly some things where uncooked spaghetti would not allow you. I mean, I don't think I could, because I did play cello for 3 years. I know I couldn't play a cello with uncooked spaghetti, especially a cello or a bass viol, right? You need some strength. And I've seen Colleen play the piano, and I know she doesn't have uncooked spaghetti. So Italians, are really professionals at cooking spaghetti, and they say that perfectly cooked spaghetti is
Al dente.
al dente.
Al dente.
Al dente. And dente means, al dente means to the tooth. So it means it's cooked to the point where you need to chew it with your teeth. But to the tooth means the tooth can, chew through it, but you can't just slurp it up and suck it down, right? Okay. So I want you to all turn we all got comfortably in our chairs again. I want you to, come on, everybody. I want you to have uncooked spaghetti. I'm sorry, al dente spaghetti now. That al dente spaghetti, when you put it on the plate, it just doesn't land there. It sort of dances around, and you try to pick it up and eat it, right? And sometimes it'll jump right off your plate or fall, jump right off your fork, so let's have a little al dente spaghetti dance. Springy, chewy, there's texture to it. Okay, let's get that spaghetti going. And so tell me, are you breathing now?
Yep.
Yeah,
Are you ready to learn?
yeah.
Ready? Okay, getting there. Ready to move.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, that's a little game that we've devised as a way to teach noticing. A great game to play with kids. You could use this as a movement break, but also even more than that, to teach this idea of noticing. And then it becomes a great noticing clue. I mean, you can always, anytime breathing is not full and deep, we know there's some stress in the body. Anytime there's uncooked spaghetti, we know there's stress in the body. Anytime there's overcooked spaghetti, we know we don't have the body is not present and ready to learn. So whenever we're wanting to learn something, we want to have that al dente spaghetti feeling in our body, in our muscles. That feeling like there's energy, there's texture, there's tone. That's the word I was looking for. Tone. Muscle tone. Okay. So in Brain Gym, I'm going to bring up a page because I think it's easiest to show this in this diagram. Okay. Share Dana. Okay, can you, ooh, what's that? I don't know what okay. You can all see this picture where it says trying versus doing your best, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on this, the idea of no, we didn't really, I never explained this, but we talked about the kid who was using his tongue to help him
Play piano.
play piano. Thank you. So there is some languaging that's connected with Brain Gym, and you have a page of it. It's the following page. And we say that the brain kind of shifts from low gear to high gear. And low gear is like first gear. When you're learning something new, you need to be able to stop and think, right? High gear is like cruise control on the highway. You've learned the skill. You don't have to think about it. You know where the keys are on the piano. You know the fingering for scales. I'm trying to think of something else, like knowing how to read. Once you know how to read, you don't sound out every word. Okay? So that's integrated high gear. That's the, I got it. I understand it. I know how to do this. There's a flow. Okay? You see this 8 on its side. We call this a lazy 8 in Brain Gym. You could also call it a lemniscate or an infinity sign. So it's never ending and it flows from one side to the other. You notice there's that X in the middle, like cross crawl. It's a symbol for integration of two differentiated parts. So we have this in our, pardon?
You were just echoing.
Okay. So, you know, we have right and left hemispheres to our brain. They need to be, we need to be able to flow from one to the other. So when we try extra hard, we're putting in extra effort, and that extra effort is actually confusing the system and causing stress. That doesn't create optimal learning. How many, did any of you in your learning have a teacher or a situation where somebody told you, try harder, try harder? And what happened? I haven't
Shut
yet
down.
had a class where somebody told me, yes, and when I tried, the harder I tried, the better and the easier it was and the better I could do it. I know my own experience is you try harder and then it gets worse. And then you get told to try harder. And then you start to feel really stuck.
Yeah,
Well,
the anxiety level goes up.
the anxiety level goes up. And then is it easier to learn? No, it becomes more difficult. The reason is that, and we didn't put this part right here, but yeah, it's a little bit later. Normally we're going to deal with this tomorrow, but I like to explain it here. So remember the two hemispheres of the brain? Just very simply, our right hemisphere is the side, it's normally on the right. It's called oftentimes the receptive hemisphere or the Gestalt hemisphere. Gestalt meaning the big picture, German for the big picture, the whole idea. The left hemisphere is the language hemisphere or the logic hemisphere. It looks at the details. Whereas the right hemisphere sees the big picture. Also, the left hemisphere is more associated with short-term memory and learning new things step by step. And the right hemisphere is more concerned with long-term memory. So an oversimplified picture of what happens with learning is that you shift the pattern from the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. You need the left hemisphere to see the individual steps. You need the right hemisphere to understand the meaning. So when we're reading, for instance, we have to have both because we have to see the individual letters and we have to put them into words. We have to know what the words mean. So we need to be able to see all those individual pieces and the individual words, but there's no meaning if it's not put into a context. Okay, so we have these two states. Both of these, high gear and low gear, are both positive states. Low gear isn't bad. Just because you have stopped to learn something new, just because you slowed down the car and put it into low gear to drive on the gravel road is not a bad thing, right? However, what is not optimal is what I like to call stuck. Stuck low gear or stuck high gear or integrated low gear or integrated high gear. So the little girl on the left, non-integrated high gear, it's hard, help me, I can't do it. Okay, she's not even going to start, right? Because she's out of her flow. And if it can be easy and do it, she's just not even going to try. She can't stop. She can't think. Okay, that's like overcooked spaghetti. A lump on the floor, nothing's going to happen. The boy on the right is what we would call integrated low gear. Now, this is actually the overcooked spaghetti. This is the tension. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And so I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. I'm going to keep doing the same problem the same way. And it doesn't work, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm like a little hamster in a cage. And I'm just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. Because I can't stop. I'm not going to stop and find a new solution. So I love metaphors. So my other metaphors for these two is the little kid is standing in front of a forest, okay? A forest has trees in it. The little girl on the left side of here, the non-integrated high gear. So all she's got access to at this point is her right hemisphere. So she says, "It's a forest. It's so big. It's so big. It's a forest. How can what am I going to do? I can't get to Grandma's house." The boy on the other side says, "There's a tree. There's another 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 tree. How can I possibly get to Grandma's house? There's another tree. There's another tree. There's another tree." It's just a forest. Grandma lives in the forest. Find the path. But he can't stop to find the path because he's just looking at all the trees. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, yeah. I have a few students I'm thinking of right now when I think of that.
Okay. So the whole idea of Brain Gym is to be able to go, I took the thing down there, is to be able to go from one side to the other, flow through the day. So as you're doing a lesson or whatever you're doing, we shift into low gear, we're going to learn this new piece, and then we practice it and it becomes high gear. And then we want to stay in high gear until now it's time to learn another technique or another new piece or another subject. And then we shift to low gear, we slow right down, we go one step at a time, but we're not in uncooked spaghetti. We're relaxed. We're ready to go. And we get into high gear. And so the girl who's stuck in the high gear, she can't learn anything new because she's stuck there. And the boy that's stuck in low gear, he can't get to high gear because he's so busy locked into his logic hemisphere doing the same thing over and over again, and he can't just go for it. He can't move and think at the same time. So what is the solution? To switch on both, make sure that both hemispheres are switched on. Then that little boy who's running around and around and around and around in circles, the right hemisphere will say, come on, you know this pattern, let's make music. And the little girl who's, it's a forest, it's a forest. The left hemisphere says, but you just need to take one step at a time. Just learn the first measure. And then we'll learn the second measure. And then we'll need the next measure. Or sorry, I keep using moving things, but I mean, you can apply the same thing to whatever you're working with your grandson, you know, or your kids in school, any subject. So you can see already, I hope, where pace can really help. You've got the hookups that relaxes the whole system. You got the cross crawls that keep both hemispheres going. You get the I'm doing it in the opposite order, but you get the brain buttons, which show you where your midline is, center us, we're safe. These are also points that stimulate, they're eye switching points. They switch on the eyes. So we can see. Okay, we'll learn other brain gyms that help with listening. Okay, and if the brain isn't hydrated, it can't function. If the brain doesn't have water for those chemical reactions, I told you that when I did that first brain gym class, just drinking water, I mentioned that. You know, I used to eat lots of raisins and sunflower seeds all the time while I was learning, thinking that was going to give me the energy to learn. I stopped eating anything and just drank water while I was rehearsing, because that's what I really needed. I needed, and you got to the point where you start to drink enough water that I could just feel it. It's almost like my brain, this fog sort of starts to descend when I don't have enough water, and it's just like everything just kind of slows down. It's like I'm moving in the mist slowly, and it's just that. So it's again noticing, developing the noticing. When do you need water? And actually, kids usually know. If you just let them have the water there at their desk or at whatever they're doing, they know when they need it. I mean, kids in my classes will say, Dana, I think we need water. And I say, oh yes, of course, thank you, you know. So anyway, so we have finished, sorry.
Or it's a stall tactic.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know. And there can be other problems. I realize water in and water out and all that. But remember, the whole idea is if you drink the water consciously, if you slosh the water, you sip of water, this is not about drinking a liter of water every hour. This is about sipping water regularly throughout the day or throughout your learning. So that's very different, actually. Yeah, you won't have
Can I
the
ask a
money
question?
Yes.
I'm curious as to how much you tell the children about the movements that you're teaching them and what they help with. Are they aware of what they're doing and what they're trying to conjure by doing these activities? Or are they just, having fun and going with the flow?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Okay. So it's absolutely fine to, the other important thing, which is a little bit easier to demonstrate in the first thing we did when you have a ball and you're in person with people. And one of the things that people notice is that they're having fun. So, play is the natural learning activity of children. It actually should be our natural activity. It's our natural creative state, is a playful state. So absolutely, it is perfectly legitimate and works really well to that ought to be front and foremost, that it's a playful, fun act. They're playful, fun activities. If you have a
Okay.
child who wants to know how it's working, absolutely, by all means, tell them. And the other side of that question too, which let's let it kind of unfold over the next 6 hours, is this idea of I do believe children need to notice the effect the brain gym is happening. But rather than I get to that, rather than by telling them, now we're going to do something that's going to focus your, help you to focus your eyes so you can read better. I'll say, why don't you, read something from your book out loud to me, and let's notice what that's like, and then elicit some noticing. Let's try this. I mean, you can even call it a game, cross crawls. Let's try this
Okay.
movement. And we can make it, and we're going to show when we do cross crawls, there are lots of other ways to do cross crawls. We can make it a little dance. We can make it a game, whatever, and then, okay, would you read here, try reading this page from the book. Now, how was that? How was that different? Do you think, that activity that we did might have made it, might have helped you to whatever it is they said? Do you think that activity, so is that something that you'd like to do before you read? That would be my way of approaching that. But
Okay.
in terms of this stuff about the brain function and stuff like that, no, I don't teach that to young kids in particular. And I kind of judge on where they're at. Some kids want to know, and I do that as the curiosity arises.
I have kind of been like setting up for taking this course where we spend kind of a few minutes in and kind of like before and between classes where we like have a dance party or we do hokey pokey, or so I could slip easily in what I was going to learn in this class.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions right now? I want to give you a break. So how much time would you like?
Oh man, I can't believe it's already 1 o'clock or whatever. 2 hours have gone by.
Yeah.
Went fast.
15, 20 minutes, is that too long?
Could we do 10? Are
Okay.
people comfortable with 10?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically 16 after, 17 after, about that.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll see you then.
Okay.
Andrea, you're really talented there. Does anyone have any questions that have bubbled up?
Mine are mostly implementation, so I think I'll save them for tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great because I want to get through all the theory stuff today. Okay, we're just waiting for Hetty. I did turn the recording on, so, and if anybody notices tomorrow that I haven't turned the recording on, please tell me. Anybody else have any questions before we go on? Okay, well, I don't know if Hetty is, are you with us, Hetty? Maybe not.
Here.
Okay. I know I'm a real task driver.
There's lots-
I love teaching brain gym, so I just want to teach and teach and teach. Okay. So I'm going to suggest that we all start doing pace again, kind of get you in the habit. So once you know pace, you can do pace in 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big, long ritual. Just tune in your body and follow what it tells you. It says you're ready to go on to the next thing, go on to the next thing. I often get people asking, well, how many minutes should I do this for? And how many minutes should I do that for? And it's like everything, everybody's different. When it comes to cross crawls, there are lots of variations we can do. If you just remember the principle is one upper limb and the opposite lower limb. So we can do it behind, but crossing. A lot of kids will do this. Okay, so we're doing crossing. And I often teach it with a reach first. Especially with kids first learning to do cross crawls. I put that reach in there because the changing of the weight as they reach frees up the other leg, even if you're doing it to the front. Reach. And you can do this to music. Tomorrow I'll do a little rhythmic variation that I sometimes do with it for the music teachers.
I often use sticks and we do cross in class.
Super. And that can function as a cross crawl.
Yeah.
Be
And
creative.
I start my class with the opening song.
Be creative with it. Oh, and I'll demonstrate. So you can do hook up standing up as well. You just cross your ankles. Now, for young kids, often this is a balance problem. So I will do it when I teach it to young kids to start with, we're usually sitting cross-legged on the floor in the school or in a chair. Eventually, it's great to do it because the vestibular stimulation of having to balance on standing up is also activating your brain. However, I work a lot with young children and with seniors, and in both those cases, I don't want it to be a struggle just to stand up. So the other thing I want to say about teaching hookups is that the first time you do it, especially I find with children, is a couple of things. Model it yourself. You know the calmness that hookups brings to you. If you are teaching in person, that change in your energy, they're going to feel that, and that's going to help them to get out of the wiggles and the giggles of doing what they often call them pretzels or hiccups or other funny names, So just modeling the behavior and just letting them go through, especially when the first time or two they do it, give yourself enough time. It might take 5 minutes, but I've had a double kindergarten class of 50 kids. All the first time I teach them, I've gotten them all, sitting down calmly in their hookups. But it just means having the patience take and the time to be able to just wait for them all. And as more and more of them find that calmness and that stillness together, they'll start to affect the rest of them. And I don't know if any of you work with really little kids. I will put them on my lap and just hug their, if you can imagine it, I don't have a big stuffed toy sometimes I have for teaching here, but taking their arms and just hugging them around them like this. Or sometimes I make their hands do the thing and then I hold their hands. And they may start to resist a little bit, but if you're breathing with them and just sending them love, that they'll entrain, the word entrainment, they'll pick up on that energy. And actually, it's a physiological thing. The magnetic energy from our heart, it's the strongest electromagnetic field in our body comes from our heart. It's stronger than the electromagnetic energy in our brain actually is in our heart. Our heart is 60% nerve cells from what the Heart Math Institute says. So just that, I've done it with so many kids. It always works, basically. Okay. So I want to start with we're going to have just the last little piece of the theory, and then we're going to do brain gym for the rest of the afternoon. Okay, so I'm going to do my screen share again. And I'm going to find the picture of the brain, which happens to be on page 22 in your manuals. If you'd rather take your eyes off the screen for a bit, you can find it on there. But here it is. So you might have noticed that your manual, I'm trying to think what I want. No. Okay. Forget the focus dimension at the bottom. Don't, I know what I'll do. Okay. So we look at a simplified version of the brain that is actually used in a lot of literature nowadays, including, sort of scientific literature. We're not looking at the anatomical names necessarily for these three parts of the brain. Like an anatomist would be very specific about what all these different parts are. Hypothalamus, thalamus, cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, all these sort of things. We're not going to bother ourselves about that. And this is something that you don't need to teach the kids about, but it's kind of, you notice that we've got 3 different colors here, red, blue, and yellow, and they are the colors that all the pages in your book are color-coded according to those 3 colors, because Dr. Dennison developed 3 categories of brain gym, and the 3 categories of brain gym relate to these 3 different basic parts of the brain. So what are those 3 parts? So first we have the brain stem, sometimes called the reptilian brain. This is the part of the brain that is totally reflexive. It consists of the brain stem, and I think of the cerebellum as kind of special and extra. The cerebellum is this, can you see my pointer? I don't know how to get a bigger pointer on here because I'm in Acrobat. So the red thing that looks like a cauliflower, that is the cerebellum. It is the most densely populated with neurons of any part of the brain. I mean, I think there are more neurons in that cauliflower shaped thing than in the whole rest of the brain. Okay, that is where all of our movement patterns are stored. That is where we also refine our movement and create the fine quality. So anybody, your gymnasts, your musicians, that's where your dancers, that's where the fine tuning of movement, the smoothing out, the transitions, that's all going on in the cerebellum. Then the blue area is called the limbic system, sometimes called the mammalian brain. So what distinguishes mammals from less evolved orders of animals? Anybody?
Live birth.
Live birth. And
Language.
okay,
Motion.
interesting. Yeah. And
And
live
mammary
birth
glands.
and the mammary glands. Exactly. And so that means that those babies are born helpless, pretty much. I mean, lizard will crawl out of its egg and go and find something to eat. Mother doesn't do anything for that, right? But all of a sudden you've got helpless live-born babies that have to be nourished by the mother. So we need something. Survival says, how are we going to make sure that that mother's going to take care of its baby? And how are we going to make sure that that baby knows who its mother is? We need to have bonding. We need to have emotions, and we need to have memory, because mother needs to remember who her baby is, and baby needs to, you understand what I'm saying? I'm oversimplifying it, but it's just a wonderful thing to me about, evolution and nature is, the solutions that they came up with. So we have these emotions, and they do other things as well. But this is also the limbic system. So this has to do with our emotional and physical balance. It also manages our hormones. So what do you suppose is the part of the brain that really develops in teenagers? The limbic system. Okay. So, and then we have and I haven't done the functions of these in terms of brain gym yet, but so then we have the cerebral cortex, or the neocortex, they're calling it here. Okay. So this is where we have all our advanced cognitive skills. This is what really developed in primates. So we have our language. That's where our language really develops, is in primates and in the neocortex. And that one is the one we looked at in terms of high gear and low gear, in terms of the right side and the left side. So this is from the side of the brain, of course. So we're looking at it, up, down, front to back. But then we also, in the neocortex, we have that split in the middle called the corpus callosum, and we have the right side and the left side up there. Okay, so that's our three-dimensional brain structure that Dr. Dennison dealt with. And he made this, what I think is this beautiful connection between the functions of the three parts of the brain and our spatial dimensions that we experience with our bodies. So when it comes from front to back, we have the communication that needs to happen from our survival centers of our brain, opening the door to the front of the brain, the well, I think it's called the frontal cortex. Now I'm getting mixed up because the neocortex.
Yeah, the
frontal cortex.
frontal lobe.
The frontal lobes, thank you, yes, of the brain. And I mentioned before that under stress, that gets shut down. That doorway, that bridge, if you like. Okay. Then, so we work with that in terms of the focus dimension. When that is open, when we feel safe and the brainstem is calm, it allows the frontal lobes to take over. We're ready to participate. We're ready to learn new things. So then we can focus and we can concentrate. But when we do not feel safe, or even if we're not aware, I'm using the word feeling, when our body senses that we're not safe, then we don't have access to those frontal lobes.
Can I share something super quick?
Yes.
So I read a book by Dr. Jodie Carrington. She's also from Alberta. I don't know if any of you have read it or not, but she uses this idea that the brainstem, like, is obviously your wrist, and your brain is here, and your cortex. And when you are under stress, your lid is flipped, right? And you can't do anything when that lid is flipped. So basically, you have to, drink water and do deep breathing and, focus so that you can get that cortex back on, so that you can think and work through problems in school or whatever it may be. So yeah, she uses that analogy of lid flipping.
That's exactly true. So going on the limbic system, our emotional and physical balance is very much affected by the limbic system. And so Dr. Dennison calls that the centering dimension, and the key word is organization. And this was the one that took the longest for me to really feel the embodiment of this dimension, to really get it, that emotional and physical balance work together. And I could even tell you, I won't take time because I've talked a lot today, tell you the story. If we have time tomorrow, I can tell it to you how it happened to me. But so it's amazing. When I'm emotionally off balance, it's true. I realize, I cannot organize my time well. I can't, do organizational tasks. So they are, all I'll say at this point is that I have, come to experience how it is true that they are really connected. And so because the limbic system is above the brainstem and below the cerebral cortex, we call this the vertical connection. He connects it to the up and down dimension for us. And then the cerebral cortex, of course, we looked at that. That is the laterality dimension. And he relates that to communication as the key word, because we have to use both sides of our brain to communicate. Because communication is, in terms of language, is communicating meaning through symbols. So we have to have both that language or logic side of the brain and the context meaning side of the brain working together for that to work. So is that clear to everybody? Okay, so we're going to start today with the focus dimension. And this is what's going to help people to, I'm sorry. There we go. This is what's going to help people with focus and concentration. You mentioned that, Colleen. The thing is that when Dr. Dennison started doing this work, it was a lot about laterality and cross crawls because everybody was concerned about reading and writing back in the 70s. When I go to schools now, and in fact, he always taught brain gym laterality first. We, at least my colleagues and I in Canada, really believe that we start with a focus dimension. We start with a brainstem. And Dr. Dennison said if he had to do it all over, that's the way the textbooks would be written. Lisa and I wrote our own textbook for this course. So we put the focus dimension first. That's how we always teach it because this is where kids are at nowadays. They're having challenges with focus. Why? Because they're overstimulated. Their brain stems are so active. They don't have that sense of safety in their body. And I'm not talking about whether there's violence in the home or not, although it's amazing how much we have of that in Alberta. But when I go to schools, through the noticing that I can use, this is the one where I always have to start. And we spend more time here than probably any other with a brain gym. Okay? So you can see on there, when we feel overwhelmed, over-focused on details, are distracted, inability to concentrate, we're afraid, that dimension is not accessible. So we will do lengthening activities, and that's what we're going to learn now. And that will help us to feel like participating and be able to comprehend. That's the other key word for this dimension. We need that safety to be able to comprehend because we have to be able to open the door. We have to be able to close that lid so that we can comprehend what's going on. Okay. Yeah, and we know who we are then. Okay, so I'm going to stop this and we're going to play a little game. This is going to be our noticing for the lengthening exercises or for the focus dimension. So normally we used to do this like, you know, in a circle, cross crawls, and we'd be tapping on each other's knees as we did it. But I figured out that we can do this online. The rhythm's not going to be great, maybe, but we're going to tap thighs, and then we're going to tap our right thigh 2 times. Then we're going to tap both thighs. Sweet. And then our left. So let's just all do that. And let's just focus on, again, that thing of looking at the screen maybe and see if we can get the rhythm together in our bodies and not worry about the words. So it would be both, right. Okay, so I'm not going to say right. Let's see, how are we going to do this? If I do this, is that your left?
My left, yes.
Okay, I'm going to say left and right. Woo-hoo. Let's hope I can do it. So that it matches, and you can just mirror me. Here we go. Both, left, both, right, both, left, both, right, both, left, both, right, both, left, both, right. Okay, now, normally we sing row your boat. So I don't know how this is going to work, but let's just try it while we do it, okay? So, row
your boat
gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but
a dream.
Okay, that's not easy to do. You know, you can do it with people in person if you want, but you notice how just notice your sense of your body and your ability to participate. Okay, so now we're going to add our head to it. And every time we go to the left with our hands, we're going to look to the right with our head.
Oh, God.
Okay? So it's going to go both, look right, look right. Both, look left, both, look right, both, look left, both, look right, both, look left,
Very screwed up.
Okay. I'm not going to try the singing because it's just a little bit hard online. Okay. Let us now add our heads going up and down. So we're going to look up first. Both look up, look right, look down, look left, look up, look right, look down, look left, look up, right, down, left, up, right, down, left. Okay. We could all mute and sing it to ourselves if you wanted.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that. Let's mute. So let's start. We'll do one round through without singing, just so you can watch, and we'll try and get the rhythm together just to see if that'll work, and then sing
Okay.
on your own.
Dana, can you leave your your mic on, and we'll sing with you whenever it comes on our screen?
Oh,
Yeah, I was going to
Okay.
suggest that too.
okay. Here we go. So I'll say the directions of the head first, and we'll always start the M's going the same way. Okay, so here we go. Look up, look left, look down, look right, row, your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but a dream. Row, your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but a dream. Okay. Okay. So now, any noticing that you noticed about doing that?
Yeah, I'm terribly uncoordinated.
Okay. Actually, this exercise, Lisa and I discuss this often. This exercise is a great one for challenging any of the dimensions because there's organization in it. There's being willing to put yourself out there and participate when you do it in person, to be able to, be willing to sing with everybody, touching each other's knees. And of course, there's the coordination of right and left in it. So it's a great activity that way. So now we're going to learn the lengthening exercises. So all these exercises are basically like lengthening stretch. We like to use lengthen, not stretch, because it implies less effort. And we're doing with that thing of we're not trying hard, we're not stretching, we're lengthening, we're elongating our muscles. That releases the tendon guard reflex, which is part of the fight or flight response. So the muscles on the back of the body tighten in order to brace ourselves if we have to fight, or to be prepared to run and push ourselves forward. Does that make sense? Because running is actually continual falling. And it's the muscles on our backsides of our body that keep us from falling forward. Okay? So the first one we're going to learn is Dr. Dennison's favorite brain gym exercise. And I'm going to just open up my camera a little bit so that you can see me completely. I hope this makes a difference. Okay. So you can do this at a chair or at a wall. I've got a doorway here I can use. And it's basically the runner stretch. I'm going to show, probably you're all going to do it with a chair, and then I'll explain why a wall is very useful, okay? So you're going to stand with your feet about one of your feet away from the chair or the wall, hands resting on the back of the chair or a table or a counter or the wall. The reason for your hands are there, in my point of view, is to keep your torso aligned parallel to the wall. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take one leg back in a stride, and you're going to simultaneously lower your heel to the ground and bend your front knee. So the lengthening is happening along the back of the leg. Okay, and you're keeping your hips facing forward. If you open yourself out like this, you're not going to get the stretch along the back of the leg in the calf muscles, which is what we want to do. Now, there's breathing that goes with it that's very important because an exhalation causes relaxation in muscles. So we're going to exhale as we lengthen, which means as the heel goes down to the floor, and inhale as you come up. Exhale as you go down. Inhale as you come up. Exhale as you go down. Inhale as you come up. Now, another important thing is this is why I say a wall is great, because you don't want to lean over as you do it, because what happens as you lean over is you get less stretch in the back of your leg when you tilt your pelvis. So you want to keep your pelvis upright and the stretch happening in the calf. Okay? And then we do it on the other side. Stride back, press the heel down, inhale up, weight on the front leg, exhale, go down. My weight is still primarily on the front leg. Inhale, come up, exhale, go down, inhale, come up, exhale, lengthen. Inhale, come up. Now, this is where I say if you could have a wall, I'm going to, you would put your hands in front of your shoulders here, and then the flatness of the wall is going to reflect the flatness of your pelvis. And flatness, what I mean is that perpendicular surface in front. Dana, your words. Okay. Well, the door is kind of perpendicular to you, but then your pelvis is going to be parallel to the wall. As you step your leg back, one other thing that I forgot to mention, it's really important that your feet are also pointing straight forward, like your feet are two railroad tracks. Because if you rotate your foot outward, meaning if your heel comes to the center and your toes go sideways, you're also not going to be stretching the back of your calves, which is where the tightness occurs. So is that clear to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
The dancer in me gets really, a little bit obsessive about form. Okay. So important rule for all the guideline for all the lengthening exercise. Exhale as you lengthen, because the purpose is to lengthen the muscles on the backside of the body. So the next one we're going to do is called that one was called the calf pump. And you have all of these, you have illustrations of all of these in your book and a little description. So you don't have to make notes about how to do these, although I'm giving you some tips about doing them that won't be in there, okay? So, calf pump. So once again, we're lengthening the back of the we did the calf pump. Now we're going to do the foot flex, which is also going to lengthen the back. So this is commonly called flexing your foot. I think it's dorsiflexion is the anatomical term. But I might bring my skeleton in tomorrow. You notice that, can you see the action? I'm holding my ankle bone here. And do you notice that the heel is actually moving around? It's describing part of an arc around my heel. So it's that action that is causing the lengthening. So I just want you to be aware of that. You know, when people think of flexing their feet, they think of, sometimes people call this like a hinge joint, and they think this is like, you know, folding a piece of paper. But it's not. The heel excursion, it's called an excursion of the heel around this joint. This is a roller in here that it's rolling around. Is that making sense to people?
Mhm.
So that rolling action is creating a lot of length in this tendon. And that's what tightens up in the tendon guard reflex. So two ways of doing this. One is you hold at the back of your knee, at the top of your calf, and kind of like a light pinch of your Achilles tendon, right? I like to cross my arms to do it. You don't have to cross your arms. I just find this awkward to do it this way, but whatever works for you. The point is you're holding the insertion and the origin of those muscles, okay? And we're going to do this flexing action of the foot or the lengthening of the back of the leg. As you do it, what are you going to do as you lengthen?
Breathe out.
Thank you. Exactly. So breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And you can apply a little bit of pressure toward the, into the heel and toward the, you know, where the tendons are inserting up here at the top as well. As you do that. And then another way of doing this that I don't think it'll list in your books, but I find really effective, is you feel around with your thumbs and you find the tender spots in your calf and you hold that tender spot and then you exhale and flex your foot, which will usually increase the pain. However, it will help to release those muscles. And I find I always have tender spots in here. Your calf muscles are, I've heard, the strongest muscles in your body. And if they're not the strongest, they are close to, but they are among the strongest muscles in your body. We use them to stand up, to walk, to run. And now I'm going to invite you, before you do your other leg, to get up and to just take a little walk around your chair and just notice if you feel any difference. And then, of course, sit back down and do the other side. All of these brain gym exercises always need to be done on both sides, of course. So try both of them, the classic one where you're pulling apart and flexing your foot as you exhale. And then also the one where you're finding those tender spots.
Can we do something about my knee being the tender spot? It's in the wrong place.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid so. That's not in this course. However, it depends on what knee situation is. Sometimes some of that tenderness can be caused by tension in the calf muscle. It could also be in muscles of the upper leg.
Okay.
And then when you feel ready, just take a walk again and notice if there's any difference now that you've done both legs. And by the way, it is really good for kids to be barefoot or not wearing, I mean, it can be stocking feet, but not wearing shoes. We can go into that another time if you like. Okay, so moving up our body, since we've all sat down again, I should have told you to stay up. We'll do a couple of upper body ones and then we'll get up again and do the last standing ones. So we'll move up to the upper body and we'll address tightness in our shoulders by doing the owl. So we'll hold on to that muscle along the top here. Now, I've had different brain gym teachers say different things. Some say dig in there and tell that muscle to release. I've also said people who say just the light touch of your hand there is reminding that muscle that it can let go. So whatever works for you. We're going to exhale as we turn our head to one side. And then inhale. And then exhale as we turn our head to the other side. And we're actually going to go ooh like an owl because that work of the jaw muscles is going to help with this relaxation. Ooh. Ooh. And then rotating the head in a half circle. And
Kind of losing when to know when to breathe. Excuse me.
okay. Exhale as you turn your head to one side. Take a breath in. Exhale as you feel the pull, you feel a pull a bit, turn. Inhale.
Okay.
Okay. And your directions in the book will say, look down. When I work with little kids, we make this a game about owls, and they hunt mice, and so they're gonna whoo from side to side, and then they look down to find a mouse, and then I let them go catch their mouse. But just notice now the difference between your two shoulders. Can you feel any difference? Okay. And another thing you could have done as a pre-activity, remember I told you should always do some nosing beforehand, which I forgot to do, was to simply, turn your head and see how far you can turn, and then can you turn it any further? And I can actually already tell just by looking, I can get a little further now on this, on the side that I was holding than before. So let's do the other side. And semicircles. And check it out. How is the mobility of your neck? And how is the relaxation of your shoulders? Tense muscles in here will actually interfere with your hearing. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is called arm activation. So I want you to all put your hands together and press into your palms. This is an isometric, right? Okay, now I want you to do that because here, this arm activation, notice it's called arm activation. It's not called arm strengthening. So this is not, we're going to be doing an isometric, but the purpose is not to create strong arms. It's to create arms that are fully activated. So now I want you to do that isometric, that push, but use half the effort that you did the first time. Still maintain the contact of your palms, but just half the effort. Okay, relax. Now I want you to use only the amount of effort you need to just maintain the contact. You might even do it like this. Just maintain the contact with the very lightest pressure that's equal, and exhale while you do it. So when we do arm activation, that's what we're looking for. Just enough energy to activate. So we're going to do it in 4 directions. So pushing your arm like towards your ear, away from your ear, forward and backwards, at your own, according to your own flexibility. So, you know, when I was young, I could push my arm back, but now it probably just gets to my ear. And when I teach seniors, sometimes they're doing like this and like this because they just can't get their arm up there. So it's just activating it in the 4 dimensions. So I will guide you through this. It doesn't matter what order you do them in, but let's do it together. So first, we're going to give our arm a stretch. We're going to just take our wrist and really pull that arm as long as we can get it. And then we're going to start by giving a little bit of resistance as we're trying to move. We're doing our best to move our arm toward our ear. And exhale. Excuse me. And then in the opposite direction, the arm's going to try to go away from the ear. And then forward or down, upwards and backwards. And if you like, you can give it another stretch. And now compare your 2 arms. Just let them swing. And actually, if you swing them up and bring your palms together, just notice if they're the same or maybe one is longer now. Okay. So now we're going to repeat that on the other side, giving a nice long pull to the arm. And then we're going to start going toward the ear. Away from the ear. Forward and down. Upward and back. Nice long pull. Okay, and just notice what that's like. Okay. If your chairs don't have wheels on them, you can do this one seated. It's now the way people teach it a lot, but originally we did it standing up. You can do it either way. You're going to cross your ankles like we do in hookups with the legs long, or standing up with your legs crossed. If you're doing this on the chair, I suggest, okay, people are standing up. Okay, as long as your back's okay. I prefer doing it this way, and I do always do it this way with kids. So your ankles are crossed. You're going to inhale up, and you're going to exhale, reach as far forward as you can. Forward and down. Okay? And then you're going to inhale up again. And you're going to exhale toward one side. Inhale up. And twist slightly to the other side and exhale over. Inhale up. Change legs. Inhale up. Exhale forward and down, reaching way out long. And come up. Twist slightly to one side, exhale, and we're bending from our hip sockets. Inhale up. Twist the other side. Exhale over. Inhale up. So I should have said that to begin with, that, you know, we're bending here from our hip sockets. We're not bending over from our waist. We're actually bending in the hip socket. So the hips will go back a bit. If we were to do that, we have another one to stand up. Do we standing up? So let's do that. And then when we sit down, I'll show you it seated. So the last one we're going to do standing up is you take a fairly wide stride with your feet. You're going to, let's all turn our left toes 45 degrees to the left. Keep your hips facing front. So your hands are on your waist here to keep your hips facing front. You don't turn like we did in the calf pump. You're going to bend that knee over the foot, look down, make sure that your knee is going over your toes, that it's not coming forward or backward of your toes. It needs to go directly over your toes. And then come back to center. So we're going to exhale as we do the bend because we're stretching this groin. Exhale, 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 inhale, inhale, inhale. Exhale, 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 inhale. Alternately, you can use your arms to the side like the warrior pose in yoga and turning your head to that side. Exhale, exhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, inhale. And if you want to add a degree of complexity, you could take the head to the other side and come back up and just turn your head each time you do it from one side to the other. That's helping to integrate one of our reflexes. This variation will not be in your manual. This is not the regular Brain Gym way, but it's, I mean, you know, he codified them, but that's a way to help to integrate our asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. Okay, so put that foot back forward, turn the other foot outwards, for like 45-degree angles. That's safe. Everybody can manage that amount of rotation, okay? So once again, we'll do it the classic way first. Exhale as your knee goes over your toes. Just check to make sure that your knee is going over your foot. Inhale back up. If any of you have, yeah, and I should have mentioned this before. Please, Laura, protect your knees. Do not do anything that hurts. I should have said that
Okay,
before we started.
I'm doing fine.
Okay, brain gym should never hurt. Brain gym should never hurt. Okay,
Okay,
now, one other thing is the way to protect your knees in doing this lunge is to really engage your foot on the floor. So stretching your toes out, reaching your toes long as you do the exhalation, and your heel is stretching back into the ground as well. So your whole foot is making contact with the floor. If the foot is active, it's going to activate all the kinetic chain up your leg, and that's going to support your knee. Okay, and then we can try it with the other arms. Exhale, maybe with the turning of the head. Inhale up, turn your head to the other side. Exhale. Inhale, head comes back. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. There we go. Okay. I'm kind of moving forward here. The clock's got a little ahead of me here for some reason. So just to show you briefly the way you can do this in a chair. Once again, you bend forward from your hip socket, and it's the same thing. You reach up, you stretch way forward and out, and then you add the twist to it, going more toward one side and the other. And the other thing is what I've noticed is that you can do this two ways. You can really concentrate on the reach out into space, creating your fingers are tracing a rainbow over, or if you want that, I find really brings stretch on the backs of my legs, stretching those hamstrings. If you want to allow your head to drop and your body to go over, then I feel the stretch along my spine. So the directions aren't terribly specific about that, but I think it says generally bending from the hips and stretching forward. Okay, but you can do both. And of course, if you want to hang out there, over there, and take a few breaths there to really release those muscles, that's.
Is this one called the grounder?
The grounder is the one in the warrior type pose.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And this one is called the gravity glider. Sorry, I didn't
gotcha.
give you the name. It's called
Yeah.
the gravity
Yeah.
glider. Okay.
Perfect.
And they're all in your book. And they're all in the red section. Red stands for reptilian brain, brainstem lengthening exercises. So I want to do our little row your boat again. So let's try it together. Let's do the advanced version. If you want to, it's up to you whether you want to sing or not. You can.
I'm tone deaf. I'm not singing in front of all the musicians.
That's fine. We decided to mute anyway, except for me.
But don't forget, we're all teachers, so we see people at all levels. So you'd be fine. You'd be fine.
It's
Okay.
funny.
Okay, so here we go. I'll do a couple times through with just the directions. I'll start with our hands. So both, left, both, right, both, left, both, right, both, head right, both, head left, head up, head right, head down, head left, head up, head right, head down, head left. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Okay. How was that time? Was that any different, any easier?
No.
No, okay.
I am so terribly uncoordinated when it comes to all these like rhythm cups and all that sort of thing. It's just like, oh, some people make it look really easy, but I have to really, really concentrate, I think.
Okay, so, and like I say, so for you, and this is, okay, so here we go into, how do you use this? Well, as we learn the way these 3 dimensions work, we would start to know, like I already, when you told me, and actually I could notice a little bit in terms of you, it seems more with the coordinating the movement. So then I would say, we're not dealing with focus dimension. We're dealing with organization and coordination. And so we would be working in the other 2 areas of brain gym in your case.
Right.
But for some kids, just being able to be present would be the situation. Anybody else have any?
I was able to do, so kind of like at the beginning, the girl who's like, oh my God, there's all this for us. I don't think I could do it. So even before we started the exercise the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be ridiculous. But this time I was actually able to get into the flow and understand that my head is actually rotating in one big circle and I could see the picture. So I was able to do all the steps. And only when I realized to look up to look at you did I get messed up.
Right.
Maybe that's
But I was able to actually see the process.
So that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you could relate it to our idea of the different, high gear and low gear and how that works. Because you were seeing the big picture the second time, you could see the patterns that were involved and not just, a whole bunch of directions.
That's right. Not just the steps. I could actually see what the goal was, to look like a wheel, to be like going in a circle.
Yeah. And that's part of what the focus dimension is about, because our brainstem is pattern senses. It's one of the things the brainstem does. Any other comments or questions? You're muted, Laura.
I had a really hard time seeing the pattern. She just explained it to me. And I teach people on the wheel all the time. Oh, boy.
I found it easier to do it a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I found by doing it slow, I had to stop and kind of think more, whereas if quicker, it seemed to be more of a pattern.
Uh-huh. Okay. Anything else? I'm wanting to make sure we get, but actually we're not doing badly. The next dimension is the centering dimension. So this is all color-coded blue in your book. This is where we work with the limbic system. This is where we work on balance and organization. So our activity to challenge our centering dimension is called puppets. I mean, I love this. This is really great. An example of how I use this in that school that I mentioned with the kids who are largely immigrant kids. I had some girls in a class when I was doing the whole class, and I was working with fundamental movement patterns with them. And we were doing puppets, the version where you do it in partners on the floor, which is actually on page 31. We're going to do on page 32. We're going to do page 31 today. And basically, the puppet lies on the floor, and the puppeteer touches a body part and they need to lift that body part just like they were a marionette. And I had we did a little reflection after we did it the first time before we did some activities to help with it. And they actually told me, well, when she touched down, I didn't know, and she would point, she said, I didn't know whether they were touching this one or this one. I thought, wow, I mean, kids nowadays, some of them in the classes, like we do a lot of that touch your head, touch your this game, because they don't know their body parts and they don't actually, I mean, you tell them to move their left elbow and, you know, they don't know what to do.
They're disconnected.
They're disconnected. Thank you, Mano, for finding the words for me. Okay, so I'm just going to do with this with the way we just came up with it for on the web. So everybody, wave your right hand in the air. Okay, stamp your left foot on the ground. Okay, lift your right shoulder. Okay, nod your head. Lift your left knee. Okay, now wave your right hand and stamp your left foot at the same time. Okay, nod your head and lift your right knee. Okay, lift your left elbow and wiggle your right toes. Okay, was any of that challenging?
No.
No? Well, you guys are really organized. And of course it would be different if this was being done through touching and you had to work with just the tactile stimulation. We'll do a little bit of, okay, I just got a message from Andrea, sorry. Okay, she's coming back shortly. Okay, let's just try it with our eyes closed, because that would be, doing it on the floor, that would be the way we would do it normally. So close your eyes and just see if this makes any difference. Okay. Lift your left shoulder and your right knee. Wiggle your right toes and wave your left fingers. Nod your head and stamp your left foot. Lift your right hand and stretch your left hand behind you. Okay, so how is that?
A little bit
Okay.
easier.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because you tune into the body from the inside. Okay. And of course, another thing is if you were doing this tactily, you would be touching both. And this is what I realized, or I may have to come up with a new one for this, because tactily what you're doing is you're touching both limbs at the same time. And then they have to, your body has to interpret two things. That's why it becomes a challenge for organization. But what I just realized now is I'm telling you to move two things, but I tell you one thing at a time. So you can put up your right hand, then you can put up your left. And that's not the same as having to do this. So you kind of get what we're working at with here. And you can read through how we would do this on the ground. I wrote very careful descriptions. So you could actually do that with your students. If you have it, you can question me about it tomorrow if you don't understand it. But I would like to go on with learning the movements, because that's what I think is most important, is that you understand how to do them well. So what we do in the centering dimension is what are called energy exercises, because we're basically working with the energy system of the body. So this means that most of these activities involve acupressure points, because the Chinese, are way ahead of the rest of the world in working with the energy system in the body. I mean, they've been working with it for thousands of years. So we use those acupressure points. And of course, there are other things like you actually know already, will I get this right? 2 energy exercises and one that's also going to be in this section that you learned already today. Can you guess what those are? Energy exercises. Think back to the first half of class. Water. That's your
Drinking
first
water.
energy exercise. So let's all have a sip of water. Okay. Mano, you're right. Hookups are another one. And it's kind of a subdivision of energy exercises, which we call deepening attitudes. So we'll do those too, since Mano already went for that. So we all know our hookups. This is very powerful and very helpful. And it's a great thing to teach to kids at a time when they're not in stress. I mean, teaching it as an activity for them to use, so that then when they get stressed out, you can say, would you like to sit in hookups? And an example would be the little girl who comes crying off the playground. Johnny hit me, or Susie doesn't want to play with me, and they're sobbing, right? I mean, it's a life crisis for them. So one of the things you could do is invite them to sit in hookups. You know what that calming did for you, but it's always great. It's much easier for them to learn something new when they're not in stress. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's a great technique, but everything we've talked about here is how it's important to learn things in a non-stressful way. So it's great to teach this. And of course, if you've taught them PACE and they use it at the beginning of a class or the beginning of the school day or the beginning of a session together, then they have that resource. What is Brain Gym to me? Another thing, I keep coming back to this question, because it's not easy for me if somebody says, what is Brain Gym? But what is Brain Gym to me is something experienced. So what it is to me in this sense is Brain Gym is a toolbox of resources that I use to make living easier, learning easier, to help me to be present, fully present, and have all my senses and all the parts of my brain body system working together. Okay. And the second part of hookups is something we use with a technique called repatterning, which you're not going to learn. This is part of the 32-hour course. It's way beyond the scope of this. But we call this the integration metaphor. And we use it as the kind of a culminating step of part of the repatterning. So it is like a metaphor of both sides of our brain connected. You had the metaphor, Linnea, of the cerebral cortex on top, that's from the side, but this is sort of like the metaphor, the picture of the brain from side to side. One Brain Gym teacher told me that a boy told her that this was a spider doing push-ups on a mirror. I love that. So we could be doing push-ups on a mirror as we do this. And for some children, just the process of being able to watch their hands and actually make their fingertips meet up, that in itself is the Brain Gym for them, for this. Okay. So second part of hookups is the integration metaphor, and it's easy to forget the second part because it's the first part that usually calms the energy down. Somebody says to me, this is like saying, okay, I've calmed, I've gone into myself, and then this is like saying, I'm here, I'm present, I'm ready to go. Both sides of my brain are ready, working together. So the other deepening attitude, so we've gone on what is usually green, and I'm just going to look in the book. Did we do that? Yes. Deepening attitudes is actually on page 36 in your manual. It follows the energy exercises, but they're really energy exercises as well. But these two are specifically for calming and getting the energy up to the prefrontal cortex. So this is positive points. And these are called by Touch for Health people emotional stress release points. So you may have heard of emotional stress release, ESRs. So I have friends, my own Jenny Wellness friends who say ESRs, your ESRs, and I'm thinking ESR. We just call them positive points. So they're we say midway between your eyebrows and your hairline, but mine is moving. So I'm not sure if my ESRs move or not. But anyway, so light pressure, 2 fingers or just the whole, we always normally use 2 fingers because our fingers are positive and negative polarities. So you've got both there. I love the image that it's like I'm holding the wings of a butterfly to keep the butterfly from flying away, but I don't want to, mash. I don't want to tear those delicate wings. These are holding points. Neurovascular holding points. So what they're doing, vascular refers to the circulatory system. So what they're doing is stimulating the circulation into the frontal lobes of the brain. The frontal lobes of the brain are where we have the cognitive abilities to think about our problems. So rather than being stuck in worry or fear or fright, we can bring the energy and the circulation out of the brainstem, back up to the frontal lobes. It's like what you were saying. It's like flipping putting the lid back on by doing this. And it's very transformative. It's quite amazing how transformative this can be. So, because once you get the energy up there, you say, oh, well, actually, I could just do this. You know what I'm saying? So when we do this, we're not trying to avoid the uncomfortable feeling that we want to be able to transcend. This allows us to actually think about the problem. Okay, so the light isn't, the plumbing is, the sink is plugged up. Okay, so I have to call the plumber, whatever. Okay, there's another way to do this that if you're working with children, I find is very comforting. And that is what's called frontal occipital holding. So you hold the positive points with one palm and you cradle the cerebellum. Remember our cerebellum, the cauliflower back there? You cradle the occiput. And to me, what this is doing, but this is just my, it's Andrea. I'm going to wait till she's there. Andrea, I'm sorry. Have you been waiting long? I had my glasses off and we were doing our emotional stress release points.
Oh, no problem. Sorry, I just had to pop out. I had a childcare issue, which is now resolved.
Okay, good. So we were just moving on. we're talking about the energy exercises. We reviewed the ones that you already know, like hookups, a little bit, maybe a little more information, but we've moved on to positive points, which are neurovascular holding points, midway between the eyebrows and the hairline over the pupils, 2 fingers, very light pressure, like you're holding down the wings of a butterfly. And then I was just saying that you can also do it. This is not the brain gym way, but it's also used for these points. Frontal occipital holding. So you hold the neurovascular points on the forehead, which we call positive points, and you cradle the cerebellum or the occiput back here. And my metaphor for this is we're simultaneously, we're cradling that brain stem like you would hold a baby when it's crying, right? You'd hold a baby in your arms to cradle them. So I'm thinking I'm supporting their brain stem, making them feel safe and secure. And I'm bringing the energy, the blood flow up to the cerebral cortex so that they can use their cognitive abilities, their rational abilities to actually investigate what the problem is and what the solutions might be. And you can use them for a double whammy. You could invite somebody if they'd like to sit in hookups and then ask them if you could hold their positive points, and you could hold their positive points for them and really help them get out of those kind of crises, like the little panic attacks and anxiety attacks that kids have. For them it's a big crisis. We know that it's going to pass, but we can help it pass more quickly with these
That seems to be something we do naturally anyway, is put our hands on our heads when we need to think, right?
Exactly. And what it's doing is it's calling the blood into the part of the brain that we actually use to think. Okay, so we're going to learn some more of these. So we only have 4 more to learn, because we also already know another energy exercise. What's the other energy exercise you already know? Think of acupressure points. Manol's found them right there. Linnea's found them. Our brain buttons.
Brain buttons.
Okay, and we talked about those quite a bit. So let's move on to the 3 other buttons. The first ones we'll do our balance button. So let's everybody stand up. So I'm going to invite you to stand on one leg and notice if that's a challenge. And then just, give it a rating for yourself. Stand on the other leg. Notice how that is. If you feel safe doing this, stand on the other leg again and close your eyes. And notice what happens. And then try on the other leg with your eyes closed. Okay. So, what did you notice? When was it most difficult?
Eyes closed.
Closed.
Right. Okay. So I'll save a discussion for that till after we've done these. But remember that, because I want to make sure we get through all 3. So balance buttons. We are going to hold one hand on our navel again, and the other hand is going to go, sorry, my COVID here. Okay, here. So if you go behind your ear, you'll find the mastoid bone. Okay? And then if you slide back and down from there, you'll find a little depression just behind the mastoid bone. So put 2 fingers there, sort of just at the back of the mastoid bone, and the other hand on your navel, and just take some nice deep breaths. if you hold your fingers lightly, you may even actually feel a pulse develop. So how long to do this? Until you feel you've done it enough, or until you feel a pulse under your fingers, or you might have one of those relaxing breaths, you know, where your body just goes, and that's also an indication of a shift. That could also be true when you're holding positive points. You may feel a pulse develop, and then it's usually finished. Okay, and then of course do the other side. Always holding one hand on the navel. And when that's complete, feels complete for you, just try the balancing again with your eyes closed or open as you like, and see if there's any difference. Are you breathing? What's your spaghetti like? Raise your hand if there was any difference after you did the balance buttons that you noticed.
A little bit.
Okay, well, we got 2 out of, okay. Okay, 2 more energy exercises. Earth buttons and space buttons. So I'm going to show these standing up so you can see my whole body. You can do them standing or sitting. So we'll do one of the earth buttons first. So palm on the navel, fingers pointing downward. Now, you're all adults, so I'll tell you, we are actually, the point that we would be locating, the acupressure point, is just above the pubic bone. Just like your fingertips might be resting on your pubic bone. We don't, I mean, in schools to kids, we don't say that anymore because, you know. So your other fingers are below your lips. And this is the central energy meridian of the body. So deep breathing, and we can also add eye tracking to this to add another level. So we would start with our eyes down on the earth, ground, it's called earth buttons. And then as we inhale, our eyes would slowly move in a vertical line up to the ceiling. And exhale, move back down to the ground. Okay, they oftentimes say, so your eyes trace up the corner of a room. That never works very well for me because it's not the full thing. The way I love doing this, because it's great for your eyes, I do my brain gym outside every morning, even just on the balcony. And we've got, you know, pine trees and aspen trees, and I just can go up and down the trees. But the point that it is important that you actually, your eyes move all the way up to where you, I mean, I've had bushy eyebrows. I can actually see the shadow of my eyebrows or the fuzziness of the eyebrows. Because we have the little muscles that move our eyes up are the last ones to develop and mature. They don't develop completely until we're 7 years old. That is around 7 years old. That is one of the reasons why many kids have trouble reading or end up, boys in particular, will end up with glasses when they start learning to read, because those little muscles haven't developed sufficiently for the eye control needed. So it's good when you do this to bring your eyes all the way up as high as they can go and down. And you may feel a little pulling, and that's okay. Just don't overdo it because those muscles are little. I actually feel when I do that, it actually relieves the strain in my eyes to actually move it all the way. And I think it's like just like when you extend a limb to its full extent or stretch all the way, it releases some of the tension. And I think the same thing is true with our eye muscles. So the last one is the pair to it is space buttons. Space buttons, we're going to hold our tailbone and 2 fingers below our nose, taking deep breaths. And look, this time, the focus would be, if you're not doing the eye tracking, the focus would be out. So space buttons help us to be aware of the space around us. So it helps us with skills like, riding a bike, parking our car, walking around the house without running into the furniture. Have you ever noticed how you're in stress? Sometimes you run into things. Okay, so that's what space buttons are for. And in your novel, in your manual, it says the tracking can go from the ceiling down and up again, I believe. At least that's the way you do it. So you start up out into space, looking off in the distance and up. And you inhale, your eyes track down to the ground, and exhale, your eyes track up back to the ceiling or out in space. I always like to do this looking out a window. And in terms of, and this is the opposite to the central meridian. This is called the governing meridian, and it comes from your tailbone up around to a point inside here at the top of your mouth. And if you want, you could try and see, sometimes I find these really help with my balance as well. You might find that doing earth buttons and space buttons help, help with your balance a bit. So let's just try a little bit. I'm going to ask you to just play with yourself, trying to move 2 different parts of your body at the same time, rather than me telling you, because we discovered that wasn't particularly challenging. So just see if you can just think 2 different parts of your body and move them. Can you immediately organize yourself? And how fast can you switch to different body parts? Can you move them in different directions? Just notice if it was any different. And the other thing, let's try, for Hetty, let's see if this helped row the boat. Okay? Let's just see if it's any different after you do your energy exercises. So here we go. Both, left, both, right, look up, look right, look down, Row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but a dream. Row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but a dream. Did you notice any difference that time?
Yeah, it was a little better.
Okay. So,
But you know what it was? It was whoever pointed out that we're going in a circle.
mhm,
So
okay,
it's the whole visual thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what I was missing before. So yeah, you're right. It's organization, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we got through the first 4 sections of the book. We're in great shape tomorrow, so we just have the laterality, working with the 2 sides of the brain to go on. There's a lot that we can do there, and we have some fun activities to do for reading, writing, math and listening, etc. And hopefully that also gives us time, for questions about various applications and stuff. So any questions that came up today?
Just a notice, when we were doing the space buttons, I felt nauseous doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not so surprised. So that might be something that would be great in Brain Gym. We call it home play for you to work on those. So I mentioned the thing about a balance. So we didn't actually talk about this thing about balancing with the eyes closed versus the eyes open. Why would it be important to be able to balance with the eyes closed?
You have to feel the balance internally.
Yes.
Well,
Okay,
that way you can move in the dark.
that way you can what, Andrea?
Move in the dark.
Okay. However, let's apply it to 2 things. I'll apply it first to reading. So what do you have to do when you're reading? I mean, this is before screens, right? You have to hold your eyes need to do what? They need to move across the page,
Focus.
and your body needs to be still, right? Because if you're doing this with your book, it's going to be chaos. Okay. So your body, I mean, even if you're sitting there, your body has to be still, because if your body is moving like this while your eyes are trying to move, it's just not going to work, right? So you need to have, your body needs to be in balance. Okay. Whether you're sitting or standing. Your eyes need to be mobile. If you are using your eyes to balance, instead of relying on your vestibular system, how are you going to manage the skill of reading? Because you're using your eyes to stabilize yourself in space to keep from moving. And then somebody says your eyes have got to move across the page and see all the words. You're fighting yourself. Which are you going to do? The brain can only do one thing at a time. Many, many things in sequence, but it can do one thing at a time. It's like a computer. It's on or it's off type switch. Does that make sense to everybody? So here's
to
where
shut
the
off my
physical
alarm.
skills of learning come in. Laura, sorry.
I'm sorry, I've got to scoot over there and shut off my alarm or it's going to keep
Okay,
beeping.
okay, not to worry.
Oh,
So-
I just had one question. Sorry.
Yes,
So I have had, kids in the past, students in the past who are really on that like gifted end of things where their brain just runs about 50 miles an hour faster than mine does.
mhm.
And they're seeing things in different ways. Do you have a thought about, which one of these things, organization or thinking about the space buttons or the earth buttons, which ones of these might help that kind of kid? Because the trouble is often that they can't focus on the everyday task. They're too, their brains are running so fast. Any thoughts about that?
That's a really interesting question, Andrea. I unfortunately have not been able to work with many, in that situation, because I'm usually in schools, they're usually always concerned about the kids that are just struggling to function. Okay. I've seen from watching Colleen's recitals, I've seen, I know one person who I think definitely the focus dimension needed support. And focus dimension, meaning the lengthening exercises, and we're talking about the ability to focus and concentrate. And actually more than, but one in particular, but there were other ones that I found that to be true. I think most musicians, the laterality is so much. I mean, you just simply cannot play the piano or the cello or any musical instrument, read music, move your both sides of your body in different ways. Your right and left side has to be firing. So that is highly developed. The possibility of also energy exercises and the involvement of the limbic system. That would certainly, another thing that would be a clue for that is if somebody could play very with agility and accuracy and all that, but you don't seem to be able to get the feeling coming, putting feeling into it, or that doesn't come naturally to them, then I would say definitely we're talking about the centering dimension.
Right, because sometimes it's and actually maybe Colleen can speak a little bit to this too, but sometimes with those kids, it's like, they can focus on doing what they're doing right now, but one of my little students that I work with now, and the problem in the lesson is the steps need to be followed in a certain way when you're trying to learn something, just to get everything organized in your limbs. And often those steps are being leaped because the attention is being brought somewhere that's not really appropriate yet in terms of the learning process. So it's this push and pull of trying to figure out which, should we bring back the focus to a tiny little item to try to zone back in? And, maybe then that's more of this, like maybe the center line is better, or is it, trying to get into the big picture, because, the wheels start to spin, right? When you've skipped a bunch of these steps that you need to get to be able to do something.
Yeah, so I would say in that case, they're going into high gear before they're ready to go into high gear.
Yeah.
So they need to be able to stop and think. I mean, right. Maybe in that case, not stop, but they need to be able to slow down, relax, go one step at a time, and trust that they'll get there.
Mm-hmm. And so then, is that a centering then?
That's an interesting question. Again, I have to think about it. Okay. They're stuck high gear, but not. They're stuck high gear, but they're not like, the exaggerated thing that we gave. It's another kind of high gear.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get back to you on that tomorrow?
Sure.
Because I'd really like to think about it, not just give a.
Okay. And then I had one more little question. Is the row your boat exercise just a good exercise on its own? Because that seems to involve so many different directionalities and focusing on getting your body to do what it wants. I mean, I know that for you, it was like a stability thing where you do it once and then you check do it again. But is it on its own? Is that a good thing to be doing with kids?
Yes. Yes and yes. So what we tried to do in these shorter brain gym courses was, and they were created originally mostly for working with children, was to develop noticing activities that were also supportive of learning the same way that brain gym was. So it's sort of like yes and yes. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the importance of doing noticing activities outside of the brain gym. But just because Dr. Dennison codified so long ago 26 activities, movements basically, that doesn't mean they're the only ones. Yeah, so I think row your boat is one of my favorite activities because for me, it involves everything. There's pattern sensing, there is coordination, there's organization, there's participation. Yeah.
Getting back to your question, Andrea, I'll mention about, I find students that are, where their brains are overcharged, like, and they're super bright, and they're thinking so many things at once. I find that the best thing is just try to center them, just to focus on their breathing. So that's, I want to get more into the breathing part, maybe tomorrow, Dana, but just how to, because I find that centers them when they think about their breathing, and it kind of slows their brain down a little. Otherwise, their brain is going too fast and it's like ahead of their fingers.
Ah, yes. Okay. So here comes one piece that I can say right away. Hookups with the breathing. So yeah, so what I'm seeing is that possibly part of that is that they have a very overstimulated and alert nervous system. They're very bright. And so absolutely breathing, and breathing is so essential. Like breathing in itself is a noticing. Even just, notice what your breathing is like before and then after the brain gym. What is your breathing like now? As to help them to understand what the brain gym is doing. That pattern I'm trying to drill into you, that you don't just do brain gym. You need to do noticing with the brain gym. It's a 2 and 2 together. They belong together because it's to empower people, right? So it's not so you can make them calm down. It's so that they can calm themselves down, right? So hookups is perfect for that because the breathing is an essential part of it. The tongue, if the sympathetic nervous system is activated, this breathing with the tongue touching the roof of the mouth, which is the sphenoid bone, which is what babies do when they suck their thumb, and then the letting the tongue relax as you breathe out, that actually helps to switch the nervous system from the sympathetic to the resting parasympathetic side. So I would try that, because that's not actually, what can I say? Oh, I know what I thought about that is, when I do this with kids, and I do the noticing with the kids, and we talk about the energy, pacing the energy and stuff. What I realize is this is what energy is to them. That's energetic. Okay? The energy it takes to do, I'll have to do it in dance because I'm not an artist. The energy that it takes to do this.
It's more.
That to them isn't energy. But the control and the breathing and the balance and everything that's involved in doing something like that, so after they do this, we have what I'm saying is for a lot of kids today, this idea that they can feel this calmness, which to them feels like, I guess, being tired or being sleepy or they don't know a sense of being energized, but calm and present. You know what I mean? So that's my ideas about that at the present time. Is it's partly teaching them that there is and hookups is a great way to do that. And it's a matter too of dialoguing with the hookups. Like when I do it, even with kindergarten kids, we talk about what they experienced after and where they're at. Maybe, oh, I felt cold. Oh, there was a fan going. Oh, why did you not hear the fan before we did hookups? No. Okay, so what is hookups doing? What was different about when you did hookups? There, start noticing other things. I noticed I feel tired. I said, do you think hookups made you tired? Or did you notice that you didn't have enough sleep last night or whatever? I mean, so it's a great way of sort of developing, again, the noticing. So hookups can be a way for them to learn different energy states so they can use all that brilliant skill they have, but from that relatively quiet, calm place that probably isn't something they're used to. One second grader teacher said, Dana, I don't think they probably have a place in their house where it's quiet. This is probably totally foreign to them.
I had a teacher once who said it's like being in the eye of the hurricane.
Yes. Performing is like that. That you have to be in the eye of the hurricane, but maybe creating. Yeah.
The chaos surrounds you, but it is not.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great thing. So it's like you're creating the chaos, but you're not being the chaos.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, Manon. Take care. Okay, well, anybody else have anything?
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Dana.
super,
Yeah,
you're
thanks.
welcome.
Tomorrow, looking forward to it.
Looking forward to tomorrow too. You take care.
Thank you.
Have a great
See you
evening.
guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
You're welcome.